Have you ever undergone surgery, blissfully unaware as the scalpel cut through your skin? Can you imagine if that wasn't the case? If something went wrong? For some, this nightmare is a devastating reality. Join us as we uncover shocking stories of medical malpractice that have left lives shattered and forever changed. Sherman Sizemore, a 73-year-old Baptist minister from West Virginia, lived a life of service, faith, and community. He was a beloved figure in his small town, a man whose quiet strength and dedication to his faith touched the lives of many. He guided others through their most challenging times, offering comfort and solace when needed. But in January 2006, the roles reversed, and Sherman desperately needed comfort, yet he received none. The trouble began with severe abdominal pain, the kind that would make even the most stoic person seek medical attention. Sizemore was admitted to Raleigh General Hospital for exploratory surgery to uncover the cause of his ailment. Although invasive, what should have been a routine procedure soon turned into a nightmare, one far more harrowing than anyone could have imagined. As the surgical team prepared to operate, anesthesiologists administered paralytic drugs, which rendered Sizemore immobile. But in a critical and devastating oversight, they allegedly failed to administer the general anesthesia necessary to ensure that he was unconscious during the procedure. For the first 16 minutes of surgery, Sherman Sizemore lay on the operating table, fully aware of what was happening, his mind reeling in horror. His body, however, was paralyzed. He couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't even blink to signal his unbearable distress. The sensation was unimaginable, his abdomen being cut open, organs probed, pain shooting through him, yet no ability to escape the torment. It was as if he'd been buried alive, entombed within his own body, unable to alert anyone to his agony. Those 16 minutes became an eternity, etching themselves deep into his psyche. Eventually, the error was realized, and the appropriate anesthesia was administered. Sizemore slipped into unconsciousness, and the surgery continued without further complications from the hospital's perspective. But for Sherman, the damage had already been done. What followed in the days and weeks after the surgery was a slow unraveling of a mind and spirit that had been stable and strong for over 7 decades. Sizemore was never informed of the anesthesia error. He was sent home to recover physically, but emotionally he was shattered. The vivid, horrifying memories of being awake during the surgery plagued him relentlessly. The psychological toll became evident almost immediately. Once a calm and composed man, Sizemore was gripped by paranoia and fear. He began suffering from intense nightmares, reliving the surgery in gruesome detail. The sensation of being unable to move, to call for help, haunted him not only in his dreams, but also during his waking hours. He developed an irrational yet deeply rooted fear that someone was trying to bury him alive, a grim metaphor for the helplessness he had felt on the operating table. Night after night, his insomnia grew worse. He couldn't close his eyes without the memories resurfacing. His wife and family watched in helpless sorrow as the man they had known, once so grounded and steady, slowly disintegrated before their eyes. He had no prior history of psychological issues, yet now his mental health was deteriorating at an alarming rate. Sherman's faith had been his guiding light throughout his life, a pillar of strength in difficult times. But now, even that seemed out of reach. He could find no solace in prayer, no comfort in scripture. By February 2, 2006, just 2 weeks after the surgery, the psychological burden had become too much for Sherman to bear. Unable to cope with the constant flashbacks and the debilitating anxiety, he tragically took his own life. His death sent shockwaves through his family and community. How could a man so strong, so full of faith and resilience, come to such an end? In the aftermath, as his family struggled to comprehend what had happened, they learned of the anesthesia error. The revelation was both devastating and infuriating. Sizemore's family filed a lawsuit against Raleigh Anesthesia Associates, seeking damages for the trauma caused by anesthesia awareness, a condition that affects thousands of patients each year. But no lawsuit, no amount of money, could bring back the man they had lost. Jessica Santillan, a 17-year-old Mexican immigrant, had come to the United States with her family in search of life-saving treatment for a rare and severe heart condition. Her journey began with hope, but it ended in an unspeakable tragedy that would expose critical failures in medical practices and raise difficult ethical questions. Jessica's family had fled poverty in Mexico, driven by the urgent need to find medical care for their daughter, who was suffering from restrictive cardiomyopathy. This condition causes the heart to stiffen and struggle to pump blood effectively. Without a heart transplant, Jessica faced a grim prognosis. Her family found hope when local businessman Mac Mahoney, moved by her plight, decided to fund her treatment. This act of generosity led Jessica to Duke University Medical Center, renowned for its transplant program, where she would undergo complex heart and lung transplant surgery. On February 7, 2003, the long-awaited surgery began. Jessica's family waited anxiously, praying that this would be the beginning of a new life for their daughter. However, behind the sterile walls of the operating room, an irreversible mistake had already been made. The donor organs procured for the surgery were incompatible with Jessica's blood type. She was O positive, but the organs she received were from a donor with blood type A. It was an error so critical that it could only lead to disaster. Yet, the surgery continued, and Jessica's body was subjected to a massive immunological mismatch. During the procedure, the surgical team either overlooked or failed to recognize the significance of the blood type incompatibility, a shocking oversight in what should have been a meticulous process. The transplant team, instead of halting the surgery and investigating further, proceeded with the transplant, hoping to control the inevitable rejection through a regimen of immunosuppressants and other treatments, but it was too late. Jessica's already compromised immune system began to attack the foreign organs with ferocity. In the days that followed, Jessica's body deteriorated rapidly. She suffered from seizures, her kidneys began to fail, and the damage to her brain became irreversible. 2 weeks after the first transplant, a desperate attempt was made to save Jessica's life with a second surgery. New organs, this time with the correct blood type, were transplanted into her fragile body, but by then, the damage was far too extensive. Jessica was declared brain dead on February 21, 2003. Her young life was cut short, not by her rare heart condition, but by a preventable medical error. The hope that her family had clung to in bringing her to the United States for treatment had turned into an unimaginable loss. Jessica's death shook the medical community and the public. How could such a fundamental error occur in one of the nation's most prestigious medical centers? The answer lay in a combination of human error and systemic failures. The oversight in blood type compatibility verification was not just a lapse in procedure, but a breach of patients' trust in their healthcare providers. The emotional and legal fallout from Jessica's death was immediate. Duke University Medical Center, already facing public outrage, launched an internal investigation, but the damage to its reputation was irreparable. The story attracted widespread media attention, sparking discussions about the flaws in transplant protocols and how hospitals handle the high-stakes world of organ transplants. For Jessica's family, the situation was compounded by their status as undocumented immigrants. While plans were made to bury her in Mexico, they were abandoned due to fears that her parents, who were living in the United States illegally, would not be allowed to return to the country afterward. Jessica was instead laid to rest in a rural North Carolina cemetery, far from the homeland she had left in search of life-saving care. The ethical and legal implications of Jessica's death continued to ripple long after her burial. The case brought into question the care provided to undocumented immigrants in the United States, the allocation of medical resources, and the standards of care in high-risk procedures. Questions about whether Jessica's status as an undocumented immigrant had played a role in the failures surrounding her treatment became a point of contention in the ongoing debate. Duke University eventually settled with her family in 2004, but the scars left by the case were deep and enduring. In 2004, a Long Island couple, Thomas and Nancy Andrews, welcomed their second child, Jessica, into the world through in vitro fertilization, IVF. They were excited and hopeful, having already been successful with their first child through the same fertility clinic, Medical Services for Reproductive Medicine. However, as Jessica grew up, the couple noticed a stark difference between her appearance and that of their firstborn. Jessica's skin was significantly darker than either parent's, raising unsettling questions that the couple couldn't ignore. Initially, the clinic reassured Thomas and Nancy that Jessica's skin tone was not unusual. They suggested it would lighten over time, offering a plausible explanation to calm the couple's concerns. However, as months passed, Jessica's complexion remained unchanged, and the couple began to feel more uneasy. It wasn't just her skin tone. The lack of physical resemblance to her father, Thomas, became increasingly apparent. Although their love for Jessica was unquestionable, a gnawing sense of doubt lingered. Could something have gone wrong during the IVF process? They trusted the clinic to handle everything with care and precision, yet their daughter did not resemble Thomas or their first child in any discernible way. With their concerns deepening, Thomas and Nancy decided to seek answers, turning to DNA testing to confront their fears. The first test, a home DNA kit, delivered devastating results. Thomas Andrews was not Jessica's biological father. Shocked and heartbroken, they refused to accept this outcome at face value and pursued 2 additional tests conducted by professional laboratories. Both results confirmed the initial finding. Thomas was not the biological father of his child. The Andrews family was thrown into emotional turmoil. Their faith in the fertility clinic, which they had trusted to grow their family, had been shattered. It became clear that a grievous error had occurred. Somehow another man's sperm had been used during the fertilization process. For the Andrews, this mistake was not just a legal issue, but a personal one that affected the very foundation of their family. Though loved and cared for as their daughter, Jessica now stood as a daily reminder of this error. Public outings became fraught with anxiety as strangers and acquaintances commented on her appearance, sparking feelings of embarrassment and distress for the couple. Behind closed doors, they wrestled with the fear that Jessica's biological father might one day come forward to claim paternal rights. This fear of losing their daughter, combined with the uncertainty surrounding her biological origins, intensified their need for justice. Moreover, Thomas worried about what might have happened to his sperm. Was it used with another couple, creating a child he did not know of? This thought was deeply unsettling, as the potential misuse of his genetic material was an unknown that he had never anticipated. The implications extended beyond their family and into ethical and legal territory, raising complex questions about the responsibilities and oversight within fertility clinics. After much consideration, the couple decided to take legal action against Medical Services for Reproductive Medicine, explicitly targeting the embryologist, Carlo Acosta, who was responsible for handling the sperm. They claimed his negligence led to the mix-up that forever altered their lives. While the clinic had assured them that such errors were rare and unlikely, the Andrews now found themselves in a situation that no parent could ever prepare for. The legal battle was a heavy burden. The couple sought compensation, not only for the emotional distress they had endured, but also for the potential hardships Jessica might face in the future. With her biological history now uncertain, Jessica could encounter challenges as she grew older, mainly regarding medical records and her identity. The lack of knowledge about her biological father's health history was a looming concern, as it could complicate any medical decisions or treatments she might need later in life. Though the judge allowed the lawsuit against the clinic and the embryologist, claims against the doctor who performed the embryo implantation were dismissed. For Thomas and Nancy, this was a bittersweet outcome. They were relieved their case could progress, yet they felt frustrated that not everyone involved was being held accountable. The road ahead was uncertain, but they were determined to seek justice for themselves and Jessica, whose future was now tied to a mistake that should never have happened. As the Andrews navigated the emotional and legal fallout, they continued to raise Jessica with love and care, all while grappling with the weight of this ongoing reminder of the clinic's negligence. On the morning of February 20th, 1995, Willie King sat nervously on the gurney in a sterile preoperative room at University Community Hospital in Tampa, Florida. At 51, he had endured years of health struggles, primarily due to diabetes that had led to a debilitating circulatory disease. His impending surgery was meant to alleviate some of the physical toll he had faced, an amputation of his right foot to prevent further complications. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, an unsettling mixture of hope for relief and dread of the unknown. As nurses bustled around, preparing the surgical tools and checking the charts, an unsettling series of events began to unfold behind the scenes. The documentation containing vital information about King's medical history was incomplete and inaccurate. The surgical team, including the lead surgeon, relied heavily on these records, trusting them to direct their actions without second thoughts. When the time came, King was wheeled into the operating room, his heart racing as he glanced around at the bright lights and masked faces. Anesthesia enveloped him, pulling him into a realm of darkness where pain and fear would briefly dissipate. Yet unbeknownst to him, a catastrophic error was unfolding that would change the trajectory of his life forever. As the surgeon prepared for the operation, a crucial miscommunication occurred. Instead of confirming the details with the nursing staff, he proceeded based on the faulty documentation. With no one questioning the orders, the team began the procedure on King's left foot. The sound of the scalpel slicing through flesh and muscle echoed in the sterile space, a grim reminder of the trust patients place in their caregivers. Minutes ticked by as the operation continued. The surgeon methodically removed tissue, unaware that he was erasing the very limb that had not been scheduled for amputation. It wasn't until the surgical team began to close the incision that the horrific realization dawned. They had operated on the wrong foot. An alarm went off in the surgeon's mind, but it was far too late to rectify the mistake. The horror of the situation engulfed the room as the team grappled with the implications of their actions. Willie King awakened to the stark fluorescent lights, disoriented and confused. As the haze of anesthesia wore off, he sensed something was wrong. Pain radiated through his body, yet the absence of his left foot became painfully clear. Panic surged within him as he tried to comprehend the magnitude of the error. In a flurry of chaos, the medical staff stabilized him while processing the consequences of the blunder. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty and turmoil. King faced the grim reality of living without a limb that had never been meant for amputation. The psychological and emotional scars of such a profound mistake were as deep as the physical ones. His life, already burdened by illness, became a relentless struggle against the weight of negligence. News of the incident spread rapidly, capturing national headlines. The details of King's ordeal highlighted severe lapses in medical protocols and the dire consequences of such errors. Investigations revealed systemic flaws within the hospital's procedures, igniting a public outcry for accountability and reform. In the aftermath, King received a $900,000 settlement from the hospital, while the surgeon faced a $10,000 fine and a 2-year suspension of his medical license. Financial compensation provided some relief, but could not restore what was lost. The case catalyzed significant changes in surgical protocols across the nation. Hospitals began implementing rigorous safety procedures, including mandatory double-checking of patient records and computerized error tracking systems. They required consultations between surgeons and patients to confirm the correct site for surgery. The reforms sought to prevent any recurrence of such a tragic misstep. In 1998, comedian Dana Carvey faced a harrowing ordeal that would forever alter his life and career. Known for his sharp wit and unforgettable impressions, Carvey was at a pivotal point in his career when he discovered he had a blocked artery. With a family history of high cholesterol, he understood the gravity of his situation. Doctors recommended a double bypass surgery, a procedure that promised to alleviate the blockage and restore his health. However, the reality of his surgery quickly turned grim. In a shocking twist of fate, the surgeon operated on the wrong artery, leaving the original blockage untouched. The consequences of this medical malpractice were profound and life-altering. Awakening from the anesthesia, Carvey felt a mixture of confusion and dread, which soon transformed into devastation when he learned the truth. The reality sank in, crashing down on him like a wave. He had undergone a significant procedure, only to find himself no closer to healing. The emotional toll was immediate and severe. Lying in his hospital bed, Carvey was consumed by a sense of disbelief. Thoughts spiraled through his mind relentlessly as he found himself in constant bewilderment. The prospect of facing another open-heart surgery loomed over him like a dark cloud, and the thought of surrendering himself to the same medical team felt unbearable. As he recovered, the implications of the surgical error extended beyond physical health. Carvey was not just fighting against his body's limitations, but grappling with the potential loss of his career. His medical setback meant missing out on numerous lucrative projects in an industry that thrived on timing and opportunity. The advertisements, television shows, and film roles that once seemed confident slipped through his fingers like sand. After enduring the emotional and physical challenges of the botched surgery, Carvey faced yet another hurdle: the necessity of an angioplasty. This less invasive procedure was meant to rectify the situation, but it came with its own set of risks and a recovery period of 6 months. During this time, Carvey reflected on his life and the fragility of his health. He was often confined to the 4 walls of his home, with thoughts racing about what could have been, what should have been. Ultimately, the ordeal led Carvey to sue the surgeon for $7.5 million in damages. The decision to pursue legal action was not solely about compensation. It was also a means of seeking accountability and preventing similar incidents from happening to others. However, Carvey donated the settlement to charity, demonstrating a commitment to turning his painful experience into something constructive.